3 years ago, I just emailed Matt Leacock and was like, hey, will you talk to me for 15 minutes? And he was like, sure. I don't know if he still does that, but I like fangirl, literally. I reached out to Jamie Jolly of Shadowborn Games, who does Oathsworn, and they've raised over 5 million plus with GameFound stuff. I just said, hey, I love everything you're doing. Would you guide me, coach me, like mentor me? He said, hey, do you want me to be honest about this? And it's like, yes. He's like, okay, your game's generic and boring. It's like, oh, okay.
So Kyle, really appreciate you being here. Really excited to talk to you about business and what it looks like to go from nothing, literally ground zero, starting from scratch, all the way to being able to push that big green button that says launch and launch a crowdfunding campaign. And I'm excited because I've kind of been able to see you grow over this journey in a lot of ways, right? I've been checking out the game that you've been working on and bringing to life. It's got a lot of really cool things that I'm so excited for you to like tell more and more people about this game that you've been working on, this like massive RPG, super amazing narrative. It's awesome. And so, but I've also been able to see you kind of grow in the business side of things and learn, and I've been able to kind of help and consult and coach on some different things. And so the reason I want to chat with you in particular about the business side of things is because you are right here in the thick of it. I've talked to lots of people over the years that have been doing this for a long time. And that's great because you get some really amazing stories and anecdotes and information from somebody that has, 10, 20 years of experience, and you get to learn and grow from their wisdom. However, the downside of that is when somebody's been doing this for a long time, they kind of forget what it was like to be a beginner.
For sure.
They forget what happened 15 years ago and the mistakes that they made that maybe weren't these catastrophic mistakes, but if they could go back, to that time, they would remember and realize, oh yeah, there was these holes I fell in that weren't deep holes. They weren't massive. I screwed up the entire shipping of a campaign and it like blew up my company. Like not like that, but just like the little minor day-to-day kind of issues that you run into, you forget about when you've been doing this for a long time. And so I'm excited to chat with you today. Just the steps, almost like this 10 steps in the road of going from nothing to being able to put out something, right? And so, first of all, before we get into those steps, tell me about kind of where you're at, right? When you first got into this, however long ago, which is not that long ago, tell me kind of your thoughts going in and compare that maybe to the reality you've run into. Because a lot of times people are super excited, like, oh, I'm going to go do this and do that. And they get their business cards and they get a logo and a t-shirt and a website. And then they run into the actual business of things. So tell me about kind of what your mindset was going in, like why you wanted to get started. And then the reality, the wall that you may have run into.
Yeah, I would say about 5 years ago, I made the shift of like, I think I want to actually make games. And I wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to publish or pitch yet, but I was like, I want to make real games. And a buddy of mine said to me like, hey, we could do this. And so for about 2 years, we worked on the design, and that design is somewhere in my closet. But I mean, I had talked to artists. I'd worked up contracts. I had, business cards, sell sheets, never put it in front of a single. I did so much like background extra work just because it was fun and exciting. But yeah, now I'm certainly, I shifted about 3 months ago into this like very fast track of like, I am publishing a game as fast as possible because I had found the game that I wanted to publish first. And so that's yes, this big massive RPG game is in the background, but most of these lessons are found through the 5 years of that. And then very specifically through these last 3 months of like everyday grinding on getting it across the finish line.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing about your story is your first published game is not going to be your design. You've got your own design. You've got some amazing stuff coming later. So tell me that thought process. What made you kind of step back? Because I don't know if anybody who's done that. I know people who have gotten into publishing, not wanting to really publish anything of theirs. They want to do the publishing stuff. They're not really into the design part. But I don't know any designers that started off publishing somebody else's game. Like, I'm sure they're out there, but I don't know of any off the top of my head. So tell me that thought process and like why you're doing it that way.
Yeah, it is extremely practical, and I'm just trying to be as humble as possible. I want to build a community that is absolutely in love with our products, and I want to do it well by them the first time. So my game is it's an Awaken Realms level of, it's hundreds and hundreds of cards, 200 hours plus of content, narrative, campaign. It's Dungeons and Dragons brought to life, basically. And I just knew there was going to be all sorts of pitfalls and steps that I'm trying to avoid miniatures, and there's some stuff I'm trying to do to be wise, but I went to Proto ATL back in March of this year and saw this guy's design of basically tic-tac-toe with cards, and it's strategic. And I was like, look, 18 cards, beautiful. Like, can I publish your game? As soon as I played it, I said, can I publish this game for you? I will publish it as soon as possible. And he was like, sure. He's new to all this as well. But for me, I wanted to cut my teeth on an 18 card wallet game that is, let's make hundreds or maybe thousands of dollars worth of mistakes, not tens of thousands or hundreds of $1,000s of mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. And also the lead time. Like you said, this is an 18 card game. You can get that to market. I mean, tomorrow. I mean, you can get some art done, some graphic design. Mm-hmm. You only need a handful of images and assets and things like that. You put out some marketing. You can't do a lot of marketing though, because it's only 18 cards. At the same time, you're thinking, well, I'm not trying to make a ton of money off this. I'm trying to learn and build up a brand and things like that. So from a publishing standpoint, lots of cool angles, because you're looking ahead. You're not playing the 10-minute vision. You're playing the 10-year vision, right?
I'm not planning on putting my kids through college with this game. My hope is that this teaches me a lot of things I don't know. And I'm even willing to invest a lot into this. I mean, if I broke even on this game, that would be fantastic. But a lot of the marketing I'm doing, I'm not expecting necessarily to see that return, because I am just trying to build up a crowd. This is a college course of investment for me.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I also think it's really wise in doing exactly what I said a moment ago, and like going a different path, right? Publishing somebody else's game. And that way, one, you're not quite as invested as you would be thinking like, well, this is my baby. And I've talked to so many designers that they don't see reality as it is, because this is something they've worked on forever. They put so much soul and heart and love and time and effort and money and resources into this thing. And then you run into some issues. One, you have a tendency to not listen to reality. Like if someone else is like, hey, I don't think this is a good idea. It's like, well, you're not going to hear that. Or you need to change X, Y, and Z because of these reasons. Well, they don't hear it because it's their baby.
For sure. I covered that in point 4. That's important.
Okay. Well, we're going to come to point 4 and just I'll not iterate as much on that as we get into in just a minute. But I think it's super wise to go at it from that angle. And you're also, there's skin in the game, right? You're working with someone else. And so there's that motivation to push play, right? To push launch, because you want them to have a good experience as well. And so, I've run into this too at my own company. When I work with other designers, when I'm publishing somebody else's game, I want to do right by them as best I can. There's always delays. There's things you run into, and maybe there's parts of the game that aren't quite ready yet, and you kind of have to push through development and kind of pushes things. That's what I'm running into right now. I've got a game I'm really excited to get on the market, but it's just not quite there yet. And it's tough when you have to push things back. But I think it's smart. I think more designers that want to get into publishing really need to think about, what does it look like to do it this way, instead of just saying, I've got a game I made, I want to put it out there on Kickstarter. Because again, if you're playing the long game and you're thinking, I want to do this for a while, it might be a better way to go. But let's get into these 10 steps, these 10 ideas. What is the first thing? I'm just figuring it out. Ground zero. What do I do right off the bat?
Yeah, so I'm assuming you've played board games or have some interest in them. That's the only foundation I'm expecting.
That would be step 0.
Right.
Play some games, have an idea. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But after that, you have the epiphany of like, hey, maybe I want to do this on my own. So I would say the very base is, number 1, grow your knowledge base. That is, of course, Board Game Design Lab podcasts. That is Board Game Business podcasts. That is everything published by Stonemaier Games ever. That is play lots of games, play all the top games that are coming out, play the top 10 games on BGG, learn about what BGG is. It's always interesting to me when I meet a designer who doesn't know what BGG is. It's like, you need to start there. That is just going to give you so much more understanding of leading into step 2, but figuring out what do I want out of this and where am I going? Yeah,
for sure. One thing that really hit home with me is I heard this from a kind of a business guru a while back. And he said, people are always so concerned about the things that they don't know in business, right? But those aren't the things that really destroy your company. If you know that you don't know about accounting or logistics or shipping or manufacturing, well, you know that. And so you can watch YouTube videos, you can read books, you can hire other people, you can do a million different things to gain the knowledge necessary to then know those things. He said, the issue with businesses are the things you don't know that you don't know. It's the things that come out of left field that you don't even know exist, right? And the only way to overcome that is to read, to learn, to listen, to grow, to do all the things and approach things from angles that maybe you weren't even thinking about, right? And then be around other people. That's another thing. And kind of going on BGG or being in the BGDL Facebook community, things like that, being around other people in that space, because they're going to ask questions, they're going to bring things forward. You're like, oh shoot, I didn't even know that was a thing. What is VAT? You know, I can't tell you how many people have sent me a message, or I've seen it online where it's like, hey, what does VAT stand for? Okay, well, okay, this could be an issue, right? You know, and if you don't know that you don't know about that, it's going to hit you out of left field, and it potentially could sink your company if it's a certain type of thing, right? And so, to your point, just gain as much knowledge as possible. How long did you spend just learning before you like really wanted to travel down this road?
5 years.
I mean, still in process.
I've been listening to your podcast since it came out. I've been listening to Broken Limb, Forbidden Limb, whatever that one was before that. Forbidden they changed the board game business. There's probably 4 or 5 other ones that I've mostly listened to all of that. And I've read a ton of Jamie Stegmaier's articles. I just find it fascinating, partly. And I wanted to, find a little gem in each of these podcasts to be like, oh, I didn't know about that, or I didn't think about that, or, oh, how can I, apply that?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. So I'm growing in knowledge. I'm learning. I'm reading. I'm looking at the things I know that I don't know, figuring that out. I'm learning about the things I don't know that I don't know, figuring that out. Now what? What's step 2?
Figure out what you want to do. Identify your goal with all this. So the big 3 that I would say, and there's obviously, this is a spectrum, but like, you want to design a game to pitch to a publisher? Great. Do that. That's awesome. That's not really the target that I have for this whole podcast, but that's an awesome way to go, and more power to you. 2 would be to create a game that you have on your shelf that friends can play at a higher level than just, cut out cards and, something you might do as a summer project. And then 3 would be a business, something to make it profitable. I might go a little bit further just for my own vision, which is I want to make the best board games in the world, which I know is silly and maybe ambitious. I don't mean to be pretentious in that. When I set out to make my big game and then I came across this other game, one of the big reasons I wanted to switch to that was I think my big game will improve dramatically because of the things I learned. Like I would rather, and not that, we can only have one shot at this. Like we have lots of shots at this. And I think that's a good thing to remember. But I want to change people's lives with the games I make. And I know that sounds big, but it's like, that's why I'm doing this.
Well, if you're not going into it, I don't think it's pretentious to think that way. If you're going into some kind of artistic space with the intent of putting it out there to the public, right? You're not just doing it for yourself. So there's already a certain amount of ego in there. Like it just has to be. You have to have at least an ounce.
I have something that you might be interested in.
Right. Now, I believe I talk to so many artists that are so introverted and so much like, oh, my art is not worth any money. It's not worth other people's time. And that frustrates me because I think good art is worth money. And I think good art is worth time. Like that is something you kind of have to overcome just as a creative person a lot of times. But as far as, the whole, I want to do something that's the best in the world. I want to do something that makes a difference in the world, that changes lives in some way. I think that's the best way to go into it, not in an arrogant way or prideful way of thinking I have all the answers. I've got it all figured out. I'm the smartest person in the room. No. There's a different way to do that. And I'm reminded, strangely enough, of the professional wrestler, Diamond Dallas Page. Do you know DDP? Are you familiar with DDP?
I don't.
Okay. Well, stick with me. I think this has an interesting analogy. When Diamond Dallas Page got into the wrestling business as a manager, which means he would be the guy on the outside of the ring, kind of doing the little fun things, the dirty things on the mic, like messing up matches, whatever. But he's not the guy taking all the bumps and doing all the stuff in the ring. He's not the performer, right? Well, then he started thinking, well, I think I could do this. Like, I think I could be a legit professional wrestler. And so he started doing the training. He went to the training center in Atlanta back when WCW was a thing and all that. And when he got into it, somebody else who'd been in the business forever and ever was talking to him. And they said kind of what you're saying, like, hey, what's your vision? What's your goal? And DDP said, I think if I could get up to like the mid card, like win the Intercontinental Championship, not like the World Heavyweight Championship, like, but I just want to kind of be in there and be good enough. And because at the time he was like in his late 30s, early 40s, like he was old for wrestling. Like that's old. That's an old body to be in there, like bouncing around and getting hit with chairs and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it made sense. Like, from a rational, pragmatic standpoint, it makes sense. But that old school guy looked at him and said, I don't understand why you would do this if you don't want to be the best in the world. If you don't want to have the World Heavyweight Championship belt around your waist, I don't understand why you would even start doing this at all. Like if you're going to do it to be the best. knowing that you're probably not going to do it. Like, you're probably not going to get that far. Like, that's a handful of people in the entire world that get to be at that 1%. And DDP took that to heart, went on to become WCW World Heavyweight Championship multiple times, one of the most beloved characters ever, right? One of my favorite wrestlers of all time. So in the same way, if you're going to get into designing games, publishing games, don't get into it to be the mid card, to be ranked 8,000 on BGG. Like, get in there to be like, I'm going to have the number one game in the world, and take that approach. And because honestly, there's a different process that goes into it. When I was playing football for a 1AA team at Murray State University, it was a different process. We knew who we were, right? It's like, we didn't go into it with a championship mentality because we weren't going to win a championship. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. And you just do things differently. I get to Auburn University and they're like, we're winning the SEC. We're trying to compete for a national championship, guys. And it was a whole nother mindset, whole different approach to everything. And so if you can do that artistically, that way you do put in the time, you do put in the knowledge and growing in information, things like that. I think that's just a better way to go. So to your point, man, do your best to be the best. And I think that's the best way to handle it.
Yeah, and the only reason I mentioned those three is because I don't want that to be a barrier to entry for somebody who says, well, I don't have the time or the capacity or the interest in doing that. I do think there's value in just our hobby. I think game design is one of the most exciting cross-medium means of creation that I've ever experienced. It is writing and art and design and UI and UX and experience. I mean, it's amazing. One practical tip in this moment, if you're at all interested in that third space, watch an interview with Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast, surely, I mean, that's a little bit more culturally relevant maybe than the wrestler example. Watch him talk about videos. He doesn't want to make money. If you watch any of his videos, you know that that's not why he's doing this. He wants to make the best videos possible. And he just hasn't stopped. The man is a beast. He's insane. And so I just think that that's the kind of, he had a quote in there that said, nobody has spent more time on anything ever than I have spent on YouTube. And he says, because I do it 18 hours a day, every day since I was 10 or whatever.
13? Yeah, 12 or 13. Yeah, something crazy.
I mean, so I just, that's inspirational to me to be like, I don't need to make a game that everybody says this is incredible. I want to make a game that at least some people say, this is my favorite game. This changed my life. I can't wait to get this to the table, that kind of thing.
That's a good point. And to your point, he is probably a little more well-known than Diamond Dallas Page, I guess. For a certain group of people, he's probably more well-known. But I think I've seen similar interviews with him, and one thing I love, he brought up, he said, I wish there was somebody doing this like I am to push me further. Like, he just yearns for that competition of I wish somebody was out there also spending millions of dollars on every video and getting 100 million views on all these videos. He's like, oh, I'd find a way to take it to the next level, And so as an artist, it's a little bit interesting. If you're creative, a lot of times those people aren't hyper competitive. That's maybe one of the reasons they got into art and not sports or not some other things. And so I think that's one thing to think about. If you're listening to this and you're like, well, I'm not trying to beat everybody else, it's okay, well, what does it look like to become the best version of you? To realize, and the truth of life in general, you're only racing against yourself. When we find ourselves comparing, our races to other people's races, even though we have no idea their backgrounds, where did they start? Did they start a mile ahead of us in the race and now we're comparing ourselves? That doesn't make sense. And so, but if you can just compare yourself, your art, to where it was a year ago, where it was 15 minutes ago, then I think you can find a really cool motivation to get better, to be not necessarily the best in the world, but can you approach it from, can I be the best version of me possible? And am I doing that? Right? Am I putting in the time, the effort, the energy, the money to do that?
I get into some existential stuff I would love to explore with you someday, but that's what kind of a man do I want to be? What kind of a human do I want to be? And I think this is not just a hobby for me. It is an expression of self.
Exactly. Because even the times I look back on my life when things didn't go well, maybe I failed, maybe I didn't get the job, whatever. I look back, as long as I can say that was the best I had, then I'm okay with it. I can sleep at night. But even the things that have been successful, the things that have done well, there are some of those things I can look back on and go, I could have done that better. It went well, but man, I know deep down that I could have put in 5% more, 10% more. So I don't know how good it could have been had I actually applied everything to it. And that's going to look different depending on what you're working on. And so even though you might win, but you still know deep down, like, oh, I could have been better. That's an interesting place to be. But the opposite, I failed, but that was the best I had. So I'm good with that. I learned from it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And
I was going to say, I mean, playing tennis in high school, when I would play people who were way, way better than me and I would get crushed, like that was still some of the best games I'd ever played.
Yeah.
Because, anyway.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. Like when I was at Auburn, I was on a daily basis, I was lined up against a guy named Gerard Powers. And you can look this guy up. He had a pretty good NFL career. And I went up against him daily. And he was so much better than me. But every now and then, like I don't know, 1 out of 7, 1 out of 8 plays, I would get him. I would make the catch. I would make the block, whatever. And it's like, okay, I can live with this ratio. Because he's one of he was all SEC. He was amazing. And so what does that look like artistically? And I think that's something, to your point, what you were saying, like, what is your vision? What are you trying to accomplish? Is this just a hobby, or do you want to put something on people's tables that you can be proud of, that you can look at and go, okay, this is the best I had, right? That's a cool moment, even if nobody buys it. Like, at least you know that, and we can talk about commercial viability and things like that later. But
Awaken Realms has a quote on their website that is their vision and their motto, and they say, "We want to awaken forgotten colors in people's lives," which is, to me, like I'm going to steal that from them probably at some point because it's just perfect. I want to wake people up to these things that they've forgotten: are beauty and truth and danger and adventure and competition and cooperation. I mean, to me, that is everything that I want out of a game, which I think games simply mimic reality and turn it up to 11.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so that was 1 and 2. What's 3?
Yep. Number 3, we're getting real practical all of a sudden. Go ahead and make an LLC. So this is kind of assuming you want to at least do this is assuming you want to take it from number 3. There's lots of these things that are going to be relevant for 1 and 2 as well. But I'm assuming you're at this point wanting to launch your own Kickstarter, that you're wanting to go into a business of this. The reason I say an LLC, just start with that, because it's super easy. It's super cheap. Hopefully, probably you have a friend that's an accountant or a lawyer that can set this up for you. They know how to do it. And they'll pay you, it's $100 or whatever it is for the,
or LegalZoom. I used LegalZoom when I started mine way back when.
Absolutely. Just do it. And please don't get hung up on your name, because think about it. Like at the time, certainly number 2, I think right now, most popular game in the world, the company's name is Cephalofair. Like, it's gibberish. It means nothing.
Most people can't pronounce it, let alone spell it. Yeah.
Names don't matter. Like, it's a little more important for your board game, but I just get a game, because then you can start tracking things like your taxes. You can start tracking things like, basically, anytime you're using Kickstarter and GameFound, anytime you're using Google Play Store, any of that stuff is going to be encouraging you to have an LLC. And certainly it protects you as an entity. If you take this somewhere, it's important that they can't come after your house. Like, an LLC will protect you. It's literally limited liability corporation, so that if you're only liable to a certain amount if something goes wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing is you get to now expense every board game that you buy, because it's technically research and development. And so, like, there's so many nice tax benefits to this. Now, you have to, I can't remember the years, but the IRS will come after you if you, like, for a certain number of years, you only post a loss. So you kind of have to be smart about what you're doing. Like, you can't just keep losing money over and over and over.
Yeah, if they determine that it's a hobby, then you can no longer do that.
Right.
So you do need to be kind of making active effort towards that. And
exactly.
That's a subtitle. Track every single one of your expenses. Track every one of your, at this point, computers, printers, anything specifically related to your job. But if you're having a play test and you buy pizza for everybody, that's an expense. If you're getting something from the game crafter, that's an expense. And just keep a spreadsheet of all of your expenses, because that's going to save you 30% in the long run towards making more games.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so
my wife is much more tolerable when I say that, well, this is all tax deductible anyway. So.
That's a good point. Yeah. Even your office space, like if you use your home office or whatever, that area of your house now, there's
a percentage of that as tax deductible as well.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so many things in the tax code that are nice for businesses, right? For small businesses. Like, there's things built in there to help you. And so use those to the best of your ability. Find an accountant, especially one that is familiar with crowdfunding campaigns. That's another thing you want to make sure that you have. Maybe not just Uncle Steve, because he took an accounting course and he works for H&R Block, seasonally. Like that, Uncle Steve might not be the best guy for what you're doing. Like find someone that really is knowledgeable of small business, of crowdfunding businesses. Also, this is something that I ran into. Make sure your the way you label your money. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but anyway, it's the accrual method, not the cash on hand or whatever it is, right? That means you don't have to pay taxes on something until you actually deliver, which is very...
and you're referring to the money that you're actually making from Kickstarter at this point.
Correct.
Or
Correct.
Whatever it may be.
Right. Because like initially I didn't know anything about this. Well, actually my company started with publishing books, but even still I was running crowdfunding campaigns, so I should have done this. But I didn't realize what I was doing. I was just setting up an LLC. And so I had just the basic normal thing. And the government typically assumes that when you sell something, it's like in the moment. I have a sale and I give the person the item either in hand or ship it to them, and it's an immediate transaction. However, with crowdfunding, that's not the case. You're talking about 6, 8, 12, 14, 18 months different between the time you receive money and the time you're delivering. And so what happens is if you're on the normal method, then the government's like, hey, where's our money? Like you brought in $100,000, but then where's our taxes on that? Because they see it, oh, you made $100,000. Therefore, we need our cut. Well, if you haven't spent the money for manufacturing and shipping and all the things because the game hasn't shipped yet, then that's going to put you in a weird spot, right? Versus the accrual method, which says I don't owe the government anything until I deliver. Now there's limitations like how much time you actually have. It's not indefinite or anything like that. So you have to be aware of the laws there, but definitely do that. Cause I had to pay an accountant. It was at least $1,000, maybe $2,000 to get everything refiled and fixed and changed over and all that to get it correct, right? To get it on the accrual method. If I had just done that from the beginning, I would have saved that money. So that's something I definitely want people to be aware of.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anything else on? Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. So in addition to that, name doesn't really matter. Go ahead and get all of your stuff on Gmail, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or X, whatever Twitter is now, YouTube, website, any of that stuff that you think you could possibly want. Go ahead and get it now. It'll save you a headache and there's so many names that are taken. So it's just good to go ahead and know that from the get-go.
Right. And you don't want, this is a little different because board games are a much smaller part of the overall market, but there was a video game company that announced their new game they were coming out with, and they had not secured the domain yet. And so somebody saw the video and like went on GoDaddy and then like bought the domain for $5 and then was like, hey, how much do you want to buy this for? Now, I think,
I've heard of that.
Yeah. Now I think there's some rules against that. Like the government has realized people do this. And so there's some, but anyway, to your point, go ahead and do it. Just save yourself the hassle.
Save yourself the headache. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Number 4.
Okay. Maybe the most important one of them all is create a great game. Now, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. You can listen to the other 400 podcast, 307 or whatever podcasts there are on, but a couple of points I want to just encourage, which were the biggest improvements and helps for me. Bring your game in front of people as fast as possible, and specifically bring your game in front of other designers as fast as possible. We have a Proto ATL here in Atlanta once a year, and it is the most valuable resource I could possibly imagine. In the meantime, go to BGDL Facebook group, do that, and just get your game in front of other people, especially designers, because designers think differently. Yes, the average person can tell you if your game is fun, but a board game designer can do much more to show you, hey, maybe consider this. Have you thought about this? Have you played this? This is a good mechanic that you should consider. I just think that's invaluable.
Oh, yeah, 100%. The number of times I've been able to refer someone to a similar game, it's all the time, right? Where I can say, hey, you should play this because I think it might give you some ideas, or at least watch a review. Well, go to Dice Tower and watch a review. If you don't have time or money or whatever, there's no reason why you still can't understand how this mechanism works, and you get so much value from that. But yeah, to your point, gamers can tell you gamers can tell you that something works or doesn't work. Designers can tell you why it works or doesn't work. And that's valuable information. Now, don't only play your game with designers because they're not necessarily customers. They're not necessarily the people in your demographic. And so you kind of have to have a nice little sprinkling of all this. I would actually play test more with just gamers in general, but to make sure you're playing with the designers as well, because they're going to see things differently. But yeah, 100% agree.
I absolutely agree. A few more things here. So blind playtest, I know. I don't know. Is it still a part of your slogan for BGDL? Did I remember?
Well, like at the end of every episode?
At the end of every episode, is it
Yeah.
still there?
No, I took it out when I changed the format. But yeah, did I
Okay.
mention keep playtesting?
Yes.
Yeah, that's 301 episodes or something like that. It's Eric Summer in his like chocolatey smooth voice saying, keep playtesting, guys. Like
And
keep
specifically do some blind play testing. Get this game in front of people who don't know you and are willing to tear your game apart. I would say this is more helpful later on because it gives you a sense of, does the teach work? Are they playing the game exactly how I'm wanting them to play it? I'm so used to teaching the game exactly how I know it, and people can feel my enthusiasm and feel I know the game so well and exactly how it should be played. We just want to get that out of there, before you press play on or launch on Kickstarter.
Right. Two of the things I love to do is one, to say, hey, would y'all mind helping me playtest this game for a friend? Because now, they don't know that the designer's at the table. They're like, oh yeah, Bob, we'd love to playtest Bob's game. And they feel a little more open. They don't know Bob, and they'll be like, hey, this is broken. This is screwed up. I hated this. And they might give you a little more open or free information than if they thought Bob was actually at the table. That's one thing. Two, I love to give people the game and say, okay, here, like the blind testing and whatnot. So here's the game. Here's the rule book. Teach me how to play. Because now you're testing your rules and making sure those are clear and concise, and you're taking notes about what people are getting hung up on, or they put that in the wrong place. I need to clarify. I need to have a diagram, whatever. So not only testing the game, but really testing the entire experience from cracking the box and setup and rules learning all the way through the game to putting everything back in the box, which you can definitely tell a lot of publishers don't do that because it's so hard to get some of these games back in the box because you take it out and you're like, I don't know how this fit together. The box will not close. I know it closed before. Why doesn't it close now? It's because I got everything in the wrong spot. And so when a publisher, especially with a bunch of miniatures or whatever, like, give me a diagram about how this thing like Legos itself back together.
Or print it in the box itself, or however you want to do that.
Exactly. Something, right? But again, if you're not testing the entire experience, to your point, like, how the thing fits in the box. And so it's easy for you. But when you have a brand new group of players, they don't have any idea. And so now they're just like shoving the thing down. They're like trying to close the lid, and it opens like you push it down, then it opens back up like half an inch, and it just bothers your OCD, and you can't have it on the shelf because it's not all the way.
Absolutely.
I'm having like a traumatic moment of remembering. But anyway,
I'm a therapist. We got this.
But to your point, test the entire experience.
Yeah. And I think a supplementary one to that is I also work with a developer. I did not really for my micro game that I'm publishing, but for my big game, it's just, I want to be humble enough to be like, again, I'm not that interested in having my name in lights. I want this game to be as good as possible. And so I outsource a lot of my playtesting even to my developer. They do a lot of my playtesting, a lot of implementation mechanics. Certainly there's some of that I can do at home, but when it comes to like finding groups, I work with Game Weaver Games. I think you are working with them.
I am. They have a game that I was talking about earlier that we're still like working out some kinks and trying to get that figured out. Yeah, I love.
It's brilliant what he's done because he works with college students, and so he just has access to infinite college students that can play these games. A part of this too, a little tip on prototyping. So as you get into understanding, as you want your game to be a little bit more than cardstock or Magic the Gathering cards or sleeves, you want to go with something like the Game Crafter, Print Play Games, Launch Tabletop's a new one. And my only tip here, Game Crafter, if you hear this, please know that I'm a loyal servant, but their popularity has gotten them to the point where they're prohibitive for me now. It takes them about 2 months to get stuff. And so Print Play Games will get you stuff. I've gotten things in as little as like 5 days from clicking send or buy to getting it to my home. So there's a lot of things that Game Crafter has, which is great. Print Play Games and Launch Tabletop both require a little bit more finesse as far as how you do your files. And usually you need to have
their systems aren't quite as user friendly.
For sure.
But you're talking about the difference between 60 days and 5 to 10. Like, that's a huge difference. Like, okay, learn the system. That's the answer there.
Sure. It'll save you 55 days.
Or having to pay double the price, right? So I love what Game Crafter did. They're like, hey, this is going to take 2 months. Smart. Or you can double the price of the game and we'll send it to you in 3 days. So it's like, I see what you did there. So you can do that, but it's going to cost you a lot more.
Absolutely. And I say that, and I've used Game Crafter for all my stuff for the last 4 years. So I'm loyal. And if they ever fix that, I'm happy to go back.
Yeah,
Um,
I assure you, JT, because I'm the same way. Like, I love the Game Crafter. Been using them for years. I assure you, JT is trying to figure it out. Like, he is a
yeah,
businessman. He is understanding. I'm losing people
right.
because of the lead time. They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I feel
I
confident.
believe that to be true too. Go to conventions. Bring your game to conventions. Meeting people at conventions is amazing. That's how I met my designer for the game that we're. And I wasn't even booked as a publisher or something. I just was there and said, "Hey, I want to make your game." You just have incredible people. That's how you like make raving fans. That is, I think too. There's something beautiful about a convention where everybody is there for 4 days to be very, very focused on games. It's so invigorating to you as a designer. Burnout is very real, and this is a marathon, not a race, not a sprint. But I think that meeting people at conventions and going to conventions is a really encouraging way of breathing some fresh air into your process.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of publishers I talk to, they say, they're not even really trying to make money at a convention. They're trying not to lose money, of course, but it's really about, like you're saying, building a group of raving fans and connecting with new people, saying, because there's so many games coming out. It's hard for people to know even a tenth of the games, coming out on the market every year. I mean, 700 games get released at Gen Con. Like, good luck to you. And so conventions are a great way to build fans. Also, network with other publishers, network with other designers and other people in the industry, meet with manufacturers, meet with logistics and fulfillment partners, like get face to face with people and see their quality of their components and things like that. Like, so many amazing benefits of going, even if you don't have a booth, just to show up and network. Phenomenal.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last one here I have, which is find someone in your life that will give you really good, honest feedback. And I'm going to go so far as to say, I don't know that you can find this in the United States of America. Maybe I just think culturally we are too nice.
Go to Denmark, where the people are very blunt and upfront. I used to work with a bunch of Danish people, and you knew where you stood.
Exactly.
All right, okay.
And because even my good friends in America, I just can't really trust their feedback. I had the blessing and the honor of reaching out. I'm kind of fearless when it comes to this stuff. Like 3 years ago, I just emailed Matt Leacock and was like, "Hey, will you talk to me for 15 minutes?" And he was like, "Sure." I don't know if he still does that, but that was like one of the highlights of I like fangirl literally. But I reached out to Jamie Jolly of Shadowborn Games, who does Oathsworn, and they've raised over 5 million plus with GameFound stuff. But I just said, "Hey, I love everything you're doing. Would you guide me, coach me, like mentor me?" And he has been invaluable because he is not afraid. He'll ask, he'll say, "Hey, do you want me to be honest about this?" And it's like, yes. He's like, "Okay, your game's generic and boring." It's like, "Oh, okay." It's like, cool, 2 years. Like, let me, and I mean, fortunately he goes into more than that. It's not just like mean, but I'm not interested in making a mediocre game. And I just found that people who can be honest, knowing like that you want it is so valuable. And I think I got some of that same stuff from you. I've done now, I don't know, 5 or 6 coaching calls with you, and I'm not wanting just to be your friend. Like, I want to make the best game possible. You have way more experience than I do. Like, show me and teach me what to do.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, there's no value in me coaching you and not telling you the whole truth. You know what I'm saying? Like, the best coaches I had, sports and life in general, business and everything, were people that would tell you exactly what you needed to hear and make you glad you heard it. So it's not just saying, "Hey, this sucks." It's saying, "Hey, this sucks," or "This could be better. Let's talk about why or how or experience or wisdom, whatever." And so finding, or just having a group of people that are in your life that will be honest with you. Yeah, like you're saying, I don't know if there's not very many things in life more valuable than that. Yeah. A lot of times it's marriage,
people that love you and are willing to be honest. That is a
right. Hopefully you have a spouse that you can rely on that will be honest with you, like my wife. And because also your spouse can tell you without telling you. Like, I know when I do something, whether it's a YouTube video or a game or an idea, like, she doesn't even have to say negative things. And I go, "You hate this." Like, the way she'll say nice things sometimes, like the way she'll be polite. Yeah. I'll be like, "I know you're trying to be nice to me, but I can tell by the like how you're phrasing thing like, this is not good. Why is it not good? And she's like, okay, well, here's the deal. And then she'll just tell me the honest truth. Like, okay, that's what I need, right? Because that's how you get better. The best in the world typically have some of the best coaches. Like they have people that would be honest with them, right?
Yeah, Lewis and Tolkien. I mean, I'm wanting that kind of community of, co-create. And I do think that BGDL helps a lot with that as well, because there are a lot of amazing designers in there who are further along than me, or at the very least just willing to give honest feedback. Every single post I have put in BGDL has gotten at least 2 comments, if not 15. And everybody wants everybody else to succeed. And it is a very beautiful community. I truly mean that.
No, it's something I am so glad to be part of. I'm glad that we built it from the beginning to be a place where people can ask questions and it's open and it's honest, but also hopefully encouraging and helpful. That's kind of thing. It's like, say what you need to say, but say it in a way that's helpful, not just being critical and not like, oh, this sucks. But also you have a lot of people that are foreign, that English is not their first language. And so sometimes they are a little more direct just because that's their culture and that's the way they've learned English. And like, they're just going to tell you straight up, that's nice. But they're not necessarily your friends, right? It's not someone that's going to have to see you at Thanksgiving or have to see you, over the holidays or whatever. So they can just be like, hey, have you thought about this? Or, hey, this is a ripoff of this other thing you should check out and make sure you're not doing it too similar, whatever. To your point. Yeah. Okay. So that was number 5?
That was number 4, actually.
Number 5. Okay. Hope y'all buckled. Hope y'all brought a notepad and you're getting some good value out of this. Everybody who's listening, because we got some cool stuff ahead. We're only halfway through. All right. So number 5.
Yeah, not even. Number 5 is create a community. That is, again, making a website, creating a newsletter. So Andrew Lowen over at Next Level Web, which I know was at the beginning of this episode, has some really amazing stuff. They have a really great podcast for some of this. I think the big thing that he would say, and I certainly encourage, is understanding the virtuous cycle, which is basically you want all of your Instagram, social media, all of your different avenues pointing to the next one. So get your newsletter to point to your Facebook group, which points to your website, which points to your Instagram, which points to, you just want that feeding upon itself. So I think people that get excited about your game can go to learn more, and they can dig in as long as they want to. And it just provides more opportunities for us to touch them.
Yeah. in the most positive way possible.
In the most positive and platonic way possible.
Exactly. This is something, I'm trying to think the best way to say this. I have struggled with this from a consistency standpoint. Mm-hmm. And so if I can speak from an experience of, hey, don't do what I've been doing. What I'm trying to get myself into now is more scheduled. It feels weird because it doesn't feel as natural or as organic. But if you're like me and you got too many things going on and you got a bunch of kids and you got your mortgage to pay and you got a zillion creative projects in the works, create a schedule and then just kind of work the plan, right? Work the schedule and say, okay, every third Thursday, I'm going to put out an update on the Facebook group. But anyway, put it in a day, a time, a regular thing. 1, people can expect it. They kind of get used to that rhythm. But 2, it also holds you accountable, because sometimes, unfortunately, I'll go like 2 months. I won't even think, I haven't posted an update. I've been working on stuff. We've been making cool progress. I have things to share. It just doesn't necessarily cross my mind, because that's not where my mind naturally goes. My mind is on design the next cool thing, work on the thing, make it better, do all the stuff that makes this the best product possible. And sometimes I forget to tell people about it. And so I would say, just from my own experience, like anyone getting into this, figuring it out, start from the get-go with a schedule, build that into your natural routine, and then it's a lot easier. Where I'm now trying to rewire my brain to get that better and figured out. Because like you're saying, it helps make a community, it helps build raving fans that are, they can't wait for the thing to come out or can't wait for the next thing. And that's how you build a business.
And 2 things there. First off, if you can create a podcast or a YouTube channel or find some way to pour back into the community, great. That's not going to be a possibility for some people. And at the end of the day, you have time or money, probably. And for what you cannot do with time, you can do with money. And so what I mean by that is using Facebook ads. We'll get into that a little bit more, but using Facebook ads and Instagram ads to get your content in front of people is just necessary for a lot of people. With how much competition there is and how much excellence there is out there, that's sort of the way that it goes, is that you just have to pay to get. Now, again, Andrew, I remember he said that he got his mailing list was something like 3,000 before he spent a dime. I don't know what he could possibly mean by that. That blows my mind. But for those who are not marketers as a profession, I think there's something to be said for like learning enough of this to begin getting your eyes out there, getting eyes on your content through paid means, just to build this more quickly, because you can, sure, if you had 10 years, you could do this artificial or organically, but you can accelerate a lot of that with just a little bit of money.
Yeah, it's a good point. And also to realize you're going to pay something. Like nothing's free. You're either paying time or you're paying money. Like that's kind of it. And if you've got some money, then you can save some time. If you don't have any money, it's going to cost you a lot more time. That's just with anything in life, especially in business. But yeah, like you're saying, being intentional, I think, is the main thing, right? Not assuming I'm going to launch a campaign and then build it and they will come. Like unless a burning bush talks to you and tells you that specifically, I would not follow that particular line of reasoning. Yeah, you got to build a crowd. And it's the word crowd comes first in crowdfunding. You need people, and then the funding comes. So I think just being aware and intentional about that.
Another piece of advice when it comes to your community, we have incredible art. I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but I think we have some great art. People can get a bit burnt out, I think, of art. Like they see something cool and they're like, oh, that's great. And then but what makes a community is a piece of ownership of like, I helped decide this thing. So I'm talking everything from pledge tiers, stretch goals, box type, illustration on the art, on the cover. I mean, everything you can think of, include your community in it, because then they'll feel like they're a part of it. We have a pledge tier, and I literally asked our community, like, do you think we should do this or this? And I got fantastic feedback of like, look, you know, this is why you shouldn't do it this way. This is why you should do it this way. So I just think be humble enough to understand that your community wants to be a part of something. And typically they have really good ideas because they know what other people want. They are consumers as well. And it can be great to sort of get out of your tunnel and understand that they're eager to feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, it's a good point. And you can do it in a lot of kind of easy ways. I mean, a simple poll of saying, hey, A or B, you know, do you like it red or blue? Like it's not going to change your game. It's not going to be some kind of ground shaking thing, but it allows people to have a say in the matter and to feel heard, right? To feel like they're part of this process and this experience. One thing I didn't expect, but it was so fun to be a part of, is during the Robomon campaign, you know, almost every update would have some kind of question at the end and a poll, and then people could vote on what Robomon they wanted to see in, you know, as the next stretch goal, or which, you know, every stretch goal was like
which direction?
A or B.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want this, you know, the crocodile or the gorilla? And then they would choose, and like, okay, cool. And then another thing, this is, I don't know. I'm not a like super smart marketer, but like the way it worked out. So I ended up creating an expansion. And what I did was I took all the quote unquote losers from all the polls and I just put those in the expansion. I was like, oh, this is smart, because now everybody gets what they want. So when a poll came down, it was 51-49, you know, and 500 people wanted this thing, and just a little under 500 people wanted the other one. It's like, oh shoot, like half the audience now feels bad because they lost, quote unquote, even though, you know, but anyway, our silly caveman brains, that's the way it works. But now I can say, hey, if your thing that you wanted wasn't there, well, it's over here instead. And it works out really well. And I'm not having to create even more polls or anything. Like, okay, we'll just put it over here. And now kind of everybody's happy. Now that doesn't work with everything. That was just kind of like a happy little accident that worked for my game, but something to think about, right? That you can still give people kind of what they want. Maybe it's a promo, right? Where maybe the thing that lost, now you make a promo card that you give away at conventions, or you put it in the box and don't even tell people, right? So all the people that picked the other thing that lost, now they go, oh shoot, they put it in here anyway. And all the people that were on the winning side, they don't care because they still get extra content too. Everybody wins. Again, I think you can come up with some really clever ways to make your audience feel heard and surprise them, which just builds even more raving fans.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing I want to encourage is practically. So Facebook groups, especially public Facebook groups, are a great way to go for this. Discord servers are a great way to go for this. Discord is super polished, and I am biased to them because I'm a gamer. But I just think you need a way to stream. Like people don't really use forums anymore, except for BGG. BGG survives and somehow breaks the mold.
Will never die.
It will never die for sure. But just anything that can streamline that for you, and Discord and Facebook both have really great poll options and ways to sort of include your community. Number 6.
Okay. Number 6.
All right. Awesome. Art and graphic design. So I may say some things that are going to make people mad at me. I don't know. We'll see. We'll just go. And you can push back if you disagree with me. The big thing here is starting out, I had a vision for a game that was basically a CCG in a box where you didn't have booster packs and it was cooperative. So that means I need 400 to 600 brilliantly illustrated cards, but reaching out to Magic the Gathering artists and paying them $800 to $1,500 per illustration was completely out of the realm of possibility. So what did I do? There's a few resources that I think were super helpful. I started with actually going to Gwent. Gwent has a art competition every single year, and people publicly put in their stuff. I reached out to every single one of those people that I thought was good and said, hey, you're a nobody who but you're brilliant. Do you want to work with me? And oftentimes I could get them to work with me at a reduced, a rate that hopefully is still livable, but not prohibitive to my, income. Now, one of the things that specifically is interesting about Gwent is in Poland, and Poland is one of the big, I would say four. I'll include Poland, Ukraine, Russia, and Romania, who are full of brilliant creators. Their cost of living is pretty low, especially relative to the United States. So you can find incredible illustrators and artists and graphic designers and animators and such that will work with you for something that I could not afford if I were to try to source that in the United States. So I'm sorry for the United States people. Fortunately, we have things like Magic the Gathering where that, you can live. But for me, that was a necessary step, was to find people that could work for me at a rate that was much more, sustainable.
Right. I mean, it's just the nature of business, right? When you're looking at a project, you have to be very upfront and open and honest about the money side of things. And you have to go, okay, this is the art budget. This art budget does not work because my company is a certain size. I only have this amount of money. Maybe I can increase that here or there. Maybe I can sell some games. Like I can go, donate plasma. I don't know. You can find a little extra money here and there, but you just gotta be honest. And so finding someone who lives in another country where the cost of living is much, much lower, but still a high quality, you're not paying them, and a lot of times I will find, I'll go on Reddit or I'll go somewhere where artists are posting, hey, commissions are open. And I'll just ask them, what are your rates? Here's what I need. Here's the number of illustrations, assets, cards, whatever. What is your rate? And then they'll tell me, and I'll go, okay, that works. Or, okay, that's too much. And so it's not like I'm going and on the Polish forum, like, hey, I know you work for cheap, so I'm going to find you. No, but a lot of times when people give me rates that are maybe a little lower than I budgeted for, when I, talk to them a little more, it's like, oh yeah, I live in the Philippines. Oh, okay. That makes sense why your rate is lower, because it just is what it is. And honestly, if they give me a rate that's too low, like I don't feel comfortable paying you that. Can I pay you a little more than that? If I'm budgeting $50 or $70 per card and someone says, oh, I can do it for, I don't know, 30. I would rather pay you. It's already budgeted. This is how much I have. This is how much I want to pay someone to do a great job. And so I've never had an artist tell me no. They've never been like, no, keep the extra $10, $20 per card. But, figuring out your budget and then just finding people that can work inside of that budget. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. Don't apologize for that.
It's interesting. I maybe I don't have an MBA. I don't know. Maybe I'm messing up this big time. I don't have a specific budget. I kind of look at how much money did I make this week from, I'm a therapist by trade. How much money did I make this week by trade? Okay. This is how much I can work with my artist. Now, granted, several of my artists have been working with me now semi full-time, 20 plus hours a week for 3 years. And I make enough to be able to pay them, consistently. I think so practically. So I mentioned the Gwent art contests. Also, ArtStation is fantastic. I was reaching out to about 10 artists per week with ArtStation, and I think treating people with a lot of dignity and respect of saying like, hey, this is what I can do. This is what I'm new to this. This is my vision. Here's some things that I can offer. I'm going to try to do, yearly bonuses, yearly raises. I want to do some profit sharing. I'm talking 0.5%, maybe 1%. That's all I can really reasonably offer. But hopefully they can. And I mean, to be candid, I think I try to attract people to some degree with my passion and come on board with this. If possible, I will make you rich. that's not really my goal, but let's make something incredible together. And I just find that the artists out there, at least that I'm working with, their dream is to make beautiful stuff. That's what they want to do. They're not necessarily looking to, get rich off of this. It's like, how can we work together to make this possible? Every bit of my free income is, I live with my sister. Like I'm married and my wife is very patient, but like all of this is going to this because I'm not looking to get rich off this either. I just want to make this, as sustainable and excellent as possible.
Like you're saying though, you just have to be honest about where you're at. Like if you've got a bunch of kids, that gets a little more challenging, but you're in a really interesting spot right now where you can free up a certain amount of income. And that's something I've talked a lot about on the show in the past. If you want to do something in anything artistic, it's very challenging to make money. Like we were saying, people posting on ArtStation, they're not doing this to get rich. Otherwise they'd be coding or, doing programming or like working at a bank. Like they'd be doing something very, very different if they're trying to do this professionally. But what can you do to change your lifestyle so that you can open up some flexibility to do these other things? I spent 8 years in Honduras. Honduras is very cheap to live. I was also living for free because I was a teacher and being part of that organization, I got free housing. So all of a sudden I've got more money to pour into these projects because I'm not constantly having to worry about my mortgage and all these like other things that you have to deal with. If you have a high mortgage, does it mean you need to move to a cheaper place? I live in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. My mortgage, like for a pretty decent sized house, like is so much cheaper than I've got friends living in Atlanta that pay like 3 or 4 times what I pay for a 2-bedroom apartment. It's like, well, if you were trying to start a business or go into, being an entrepreneur or whatever, you might have to make some lifestyle changes. And that's just part of it. And just being honest about that.
And I actually didn't mention this on number 2, so I'm going to cheat real quick and go back to it. But one of my encouragements is don't go into this to make money. There are way easier ways to make money. Become a therapist. You can work 3 days a week and make a living. It's great. But when it comes to board game, you are fighting against hundreds of thousands of people that absolutely love this and would do it for free. So do people make money and livings off of? Absolutely. And that's fantastic. But I just think it is foolish and it's just too much work. I mean, if I were to pay myself an hourly rate, it would be like, I don't know. I mean, obviously it depends on how well our stuff does, but I'm assuming it's like $1 an hour or $2. I mean, that's not the point of why I do this. I do this because it brings me a lot of life. And I found that every step of the process, mainly the co-collaboration of all this, is just really invigorating for me. The only other things I'll mention about art and graphic design: create a basic contract to make sure that everybody's on the same page. I know that Jamie Stegmaier has one of these from one of his articles. If you need a basic contract, email me. I'll send you one of mine. And this is not, to clarify, this is not like a legally binding thing, because you're not going to track down an artist in Indonesia or Poland or Russia for $2,000 of art. Like, it wouldn't make sense. So this is much more about giving them the benefit of the doubt and saying, look, I want to make sure we're on the same page. Who has final, copyright? Who has legal ownership of this? Can I do, prints or can I post this on my social media? When can I do that? Is this before or after? So all of that is just about really clarifying expectations to make sure that there's just a lot of communication between the two of you, not necessarily because you're going to sue them if they take your art and go somewhere else.
Right. This is mainly to clear up any possible gray areas, to clarify things. I've said this on the show in the past, like a guy I heard in business, he says, I don't call them agreements. I call them disagreements, because the only time we look at them is when we disagree. And so it's just making sure we're, again, like you said, on the same page.
The only other thing I'll say for this is avoid third-party stuff if possible. I only say this to say I know that Fiverr connects people in really amazing ways, and certainly they offer a service. It grieves me that they take 20% from their artists. Do the work, do the legwork of going on to ArtStation and find people. They are so receptive 9 times out of, people just, if they want a freelance job, they will get it because, anyway, that's important.
Well, a lot of times on ArtStation too, I think there's a tab or there's something that says open for commissions or open for jobs. Like, I think there's a way for them to label that they are open to that. Because I've run into a lot of people who are like, no, sorry.
Time work, those are all tags you can search for.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. What's next?
Manufacturing.
This number 7?
All of this stuff should still, yes, this is number 7. All of this should be done before Kickstarter, before you press launch. So get quotes, reach out to different people. The two that I would recommend most, first and foremost, Longpack and What's Games. There's lots out there. Panda's great. But as far as it comes to price and communication and quality, Longpack and What's Games are the two that I found that were best. Longpack is responsible for things like Everdell and Brass Birmingham and Dune. What's Games is responsible for Ark Nova, Seven Wonders Duel, Clank, Kings of Tokyo. So these are incredible companies that are making brilliant games, and their prices are phenomenal. And they're just communication was fantastic. I'm going with Longpack for my stuff. If anybody knows Linda out there, she's amazing. I've met a couple of other designers or publishers. They're like, you know Linda? It's like, yes, we love Linda. Because Linda just has a lot of enthusiasm and is very quick at getting back. I think that a couple little things I'll encourage here. There's certainly other manufacturing episodes that people can dive into, but look for a minimum and a deluxe level. Try to figure out how inexpensive can you get. There's the typical rule of the 5X. I think that rule is good, but can be tweaked when you're talking about more and less expensive games. So for example, our game, I'm happy to put any of these numbers out there. If anybody wants more stuff from me, let me know. Our game costs about $1 to make, which means technically a 5X would be, $5 per game. The profit margins of that would just not work. Any mistake we would make would be devastating. And so we're bumping up ours to 10. Now, fortunately, ours is a button shy type game. And that is sort of the standard that they've already set, is about that $10 range plus shipping. And I think it's just be wise about kind of how much profit, how much margin can you go for. 5X is not a set standard, but it is important to think, especially for your first time, to have something like that built in, just because you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah, definitely agree on that. Another thing to think about, as far as my experience goes, like you're saying, what's the minimum number, like the minimum order quantity? Longpack is excellent, but I think their minimum is 1,500. And so if you run a crowdfunding campaign and you only get 504 backers, it's like, well, are you going to print 1,000 extra? That might be too many, So think about that. Also, some companies are better than others when it comes to specific things. Some companies do better miniatures than others. Some do better dice. Some do have better cards. Like, there's different levels as far as the components and quality and things like that. So if you have a game that has, especially if it's something like really a center point, like a one of the main backing reasons, one of the main reasons people back it, you want to make sure that's excellent, right? So if you have some really beautiful miniatures on your crowdfunding page, but then you happen to work with a company that doesn't have exactly the best detailed molds, don't do that, right? Work with a company that really focuses on miniatures.
This is another reason that we went with a small game for our first game, because I want to learn these things. Also, when you make a game and it costs $1 to make, so if our minimum order quantity is 1,500, but really we're probably going to go to with at least a 5,000 order print run. Now we have kind of like built-in business cards that are like, hey, you want a free game? Cool. Or like we have a standard, for our company, which is if you can find us anywhere and play us in a game, we will give you a free game of Tic Tac Slash. That's the game that's coming out, which is, I love the fact that I can give away free games. I met some random guy at a Disney World, and he was there with his son from Scotland. And I was like, you want a free game? It's like, I love being able to do that. And I couldn't do that with, first off, I couldn't keep those in my backpack, but I couldn't do that with a 10 or 15 or $30 manufacturing cost game.
Well, you could. You just lose money real quick. Just losing.
For sure. The only other thing here I'd say is make a spreadsheet and try to get all these numbers out as best you can. Board Game Business podcasts have a couple episodes specifically breaking down some of these costs. James Hudson from Druid City Games, Gabe sent me this one, has a breakdown where he looks at very specifically what his costs, and that goes into things like, you need to keep in mind Kickstarter costs, credit card fees, potentially like exchange rate if you're working with people in China. How much are you paying your artist? How much are you paying your designer? How much is manufacturing? How much is shipping? What are you doing for shipping? And then you get into all sorts of shipping is its own beast, but we're going to cover that one in a second. But keep a spreadsheet of all this and really try to work out, okay, how much profit are we really looking at? Because at the very least, you want to be, breaking even, hopefully making a little bit of money.
Yeah. One of the best things that I learned, I think I got this from Edo at Pencil First Games, is to start thinking in terms of what is the cost of this per copy of the game. So for instance, if art is going to cost $2,000 and I'm going to print 1,000 copies, okay, then art costs me $2 per copy. And so if the manufacturing cost, like you're saying with your game, is $1, okay, well now it's $3. And then graphic design costs a certain amount. So now maybe that's, I don't know, 50 cents per game. But then you get the real actual cost of the game, because then you look at per copy and then you look at MSRP. So I'm selling this game for $10, but then if I overspend for art, then I'm really messing up my margin, because per copy, and I'm going to have to print way more copies to get that per copy, number down. But anyway, that really, really helped me in thinking through every decision in terms of, okay, well, how much does this add per copy of the game? And is it justified, right? If this is going to be an extra $3, and same with marketing, right? If you're going to go out and try to market and spend $5,000 and you're printing 1,000 copies, it's like, okay, is it worth $5 per copy to do all this marketing? Maybe I need to do something different, especially if you have a very small margin, which you're going to have a small margin if you're doing a small game, more likely. If you're selling a $100 game, a little more margin to play with, but just something to think about.
Totally. I talk about marketing here in a second. You mentioned this, and I think it's just inevitably true. When it comes to marketing, we have a $10 game, and it costs me. So just to give you some numbers, I'm getting about 34 cents for my cost per click. And that is right now I'm sending them, and I know Andrew, forgive me, but I'm sending them to Kickstarter page, not to my newsletter stuff, because our website's not finished. So I'm sending them my Kickstarter page, and then about 10% of those are converting into, so that means I'm really paying something like $3.40. I'd have to look back at the math. I have it written somewhere.
More than 34 cents.
Yes, more than 34 cents. No, it's definitely more than that. So I think I actually remember it's somewhere between $2 and $2.50 for a conversion, for a click through on Kickstarter, or a follow on Kickstarter. However, the general guideline for that is something like 1 in 5 or even 1 in 10 of your followers will actually back your game. So then we get into things like I'm paying around $10 for a follower. So I'm not making any money on my marketing. What I'm doing for my marketing is making sure that we fund day one, because that is so critical. And so I'm willing to put in some money and even sort of invest to make sure that happens, because then it's like, okay, we got a winner and people can come and look at our game and have no fear of like, oh, is this going to back? Is it not going to back? I don't want to back a loser. But I just think that it is super important for you to understand that the smaller your game, yes, the marketing is more expensive, but we're talking about hundreds of dollars again, not thousands of dollars to learn a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And to your point, like, just have the numbers. Don't just throw money out into the wind and hope for the best. Like, have a spreadsheet, figure it out. What is your cost per click, cost per follower, cost per backer, and does it make sense based on your actual margin?
Continuing with manufacturing here, that's technically my number 8, so we're moving there anyway. I remember Andrew Lowen said that his ideal, and now this was a few years ago, so I don't know if inflation has changed any of this. I know his original
inflation changed everything, so we'll assume it has.
He said that the ideal is about a 20 cents per click through. Now, that's, if I can go into this real quick, if you can afford hiring somebody like Next Level Web, go for it. Absolutely. I actually worked with this guy named Sindri that I met on Board Game Design Lab, and he was super helpful, mostly to get me this piece of data, which I'm hopefully, and you, again, reach out to me if you need me to walk you through this, because I'm happy to do it for free. Facebook ads has a way to target a specific audience that is really, really helpful in narrowing down your audience. And so what you can do is you can say, I want people who are interested in this and this and this. So I want people who are interested in Kickstarter and board games or card games and fantasy, or like, because I have a few things that's like, chibi or, art, that kind of stuff. So now I've got people who come across my posts and they're interested in all 3 of those things. There's a pretty good chance that they're going to like this thing. So when I did that, I was able to dramatically improve my success when it came to my click-through rate. Then I played around a lot with some A/B testing, where I was able to look at different backgrounds. I really worked on I do a lot of like graphic design. I don't do any illustration really, but I get my illustrators to give me stuff that I can use for my graphic design. I have a decent eye. My sister-in-law is a graphic designer, so I get her input. But I was just playing around with a lot of stuff. Like, what if I put this here? What if I put this here? Because something similar, I was getting about $1.20 per click through. That's pretty bad. And then I was able to bring it down to about 80 cent per click through. And we really want to get that down as low as possible, but I was able to get it down to around 34 cents per click through, which I'm really happy with right now, especially considering I started this about 3 days ago, and we're launching in less than a week.
Yeah. Well, like you said, split test everything, A, B, and then do it again. And then you find a winner, and then do it again. And you'll just keep split testing over and over and over again, and then hone in on what is doing the best, because you have the actual numbers. Like the tape doesn't lie. It tells you exactly, this got more clicks than that one. Okay, let's use it. And so it makes sense. All right, so this is number 8. Anything else with manufacturing?
No, I don't think so. I don't have much more. Create that spreadsheet, like I said. So then, sorry for that was
get samples. 7. Okay, that was number 7. So number 8.
Yeah, and to clarify, when it comes to some of that, I'm in the loss. You're gonna have to speak to that. So like, I haven't gotten to that point of getting samples, sending final stuff because I'm still on the Kickstarter side. There's going to be some stuff that I'm expecting to change. Like, we're not even 100% on our packaging with the wallet games. Those plastic wallets are great. They're waterproof. They're very durable, but they're kind of ugly, and you can't put any art on them. And the nice thing about a tuck box or a folding like Tux box is that you can put the rules on the box. And that's been a big sell point. Like, a lot of our reviewers have said, hey, we love this box. Like, you should use it this way. Even though I know that wallet games are sort of a niche that people do also really like. So we're going to let our community decide.
But to your, like, what the thing about a wallet though, like, a lot of times it's screen printed, it's one color, it's really just a logo. And so from a selling standpoint, like, no one's going to walk past a wallet game with a one color logo and be like, ooh, I wonder what this is. For like, sure.
Especially,
so you're losing
Target or something.
Yeah, anything like that, right? It makes it harder to sell just sitting at the register of a game store, right? Yeah, where a lot of these games end up. And so if you have art on the box and they can turn over the box and look at it, and it's got like a little paragraph, and it's got the age range and the time, and all those things are huge when it comes to selling the game beyond crowdfunding. Now, if you're not trying to do that, then don't worry about it. The thing about Button Shy is they only do direct to customer. They don't really worry about retail. They don't worry about anything else except getting games in people's hands directly from them. So that's not something they're concerned with. Their website needs to look good, the images and all that kind of stuff. But if you want the box to look nice, then wallet doesn't necessarily make sense. I think also a box is probably cheaper just because the materials involved.
It is, absolutely. It's cheaper. Yeah.
Yeah. And then to your point, your game is so simple. You can literally put the rules, all of the rules, on the box. So now you're saving some money because you don't need a rule book in the box.
Absolutely. Yeah, and what we're planning on doing is just having a couple extra cards in there for like rules and variants. But even that, it's,
I would put, if you have an extra card, I would put something in there with a QR code that you scan it and it goes to a how to play video. So, and also a dynamic QR code, which is different from a normal QR code. It's cool. You have dynamic ones, which means you can change where the click goes to, where the scan takes you to, which is super nice. Like if you have a rule book PDF, then you can use a dynamic code that if you ever have to update the rule book, which you will, because there's going to be 14 typos that you didn't see and none of the 75 editors found and whatever. Again, speaking from experience. But if it's dynamic, then you can update the link. And that's amazing. And so I would have those things, even in your case, where the box has the rules, have a QR code or two that goes to a video, that goes to a PDF, just because it's just nice to have. You can get samples even before you launch. Like one thing, you can reach out to Longpack, Watts Games, Gameland, any of these folks. They have a sample box, which they'll either send you for free or they'll send you for free if you'll pay the shipping. $5, $6, they'll ship it straight to you from China, or they've got local fulfillment partners in the States or Canada or whatever. They'll send you and you can get a feel for, okay, this is the card quality, this is the miniature quality, dice quality. They'll send you a little box of little goodies that you can also reuse for your game design prototypes. Fun fact.
And but you can get a feel. I thought you were referring to the first production sample. Because that comes later. Because I actually, I met with Longpack at Gen Con last year, and so I was able to get one of those boxes from them. They were great. So
it also helps you. Right. It also helps you when you put in the order or when you're putting in for quotes, because you know exactly which GSM for the card, thickness or whatever. You can speak the language, which this goes all the way back to number 1, right? Information. Understand the vocabulary. Understand what you need to put. Like when I was just starting out, I would send somebody a spreadsheet and be like, hey, I need 10 dice. And they'd be like, well, what color? What size? Millimeter? Do you want rounded corners or square corners? All those things. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And you can't just say in color, you have to put 4C, right? There's also sorts of little things vocabulary-wise that you just pick up the semantics and speak the language. If you're going to move to another country to be successful, probably need to learn some of the words, right? Probably need to figure out how to ask where the bathroom is. And so same kind of thing. If you're going to be working with a manufacturer, that, especially that doesn't have English as a first language speakers as your representative. Panda kind of circumvents this by having, North American based reps that you talk to them, they talk to the factory. That's really nice. You also pay more for it. You're going to pay extra unless you're, printing a zillion copies and it's negligible. But if you're working with one of these companies that mainly speaks Chinese or another language, whatever it is, then really make sure you understand what each other are saying, right? Because you'll make a mistake and all of a sudden you get something you didn't anticipate and it's like, oh, we got to fix that and it costs you extra money, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Only other things to add on the Kickstarter, and some of these start to get blurry, is this Kickstarter, is this marketing, is this ship, but you want to make sure you have a BGG profile. Go ahead and do that early because you need to make sure that everything, comes out right. And you don't like own a page. You are assigned a page and then you have to ask people for, you have to ask them to change it. You can't change it yourself. So that's a way that they keep their quality super, super high, but it can be time consuming. We're like, please change the name. It's not quite right.
Also, with that, be prepared for a little bit of gatekeeping. Be prepared for the moderator to feel like they are in control. I had a really frustrating situation with Robomon where I submitted Robomon to be, to have a BGG page, and you had to put in all the information, all the data and the player count and time and all, submit some pictures, the cover art, all that kind of stuff. And in the description, I put what Robomon is. And the moderator came back and denied it for a page and said, oh, this is an RPG game. No, this is a board game. I am aware I'm on Board Game Geek. I am fully aware. I am a publisher that's published many board games. I'm not just some random user adding a what? And so it literally took 3 or 4 exchanges back and forth, and then me reaching out to someone else to say, hey, here's the situation. Can you push this through? And the guy that works for BGG was like, I am so sorry. And, fixed it. But it does happen. So just be prepared for shenanigans over on BGG sometimes. It's just
right now we have dashes and exclamation points in our name that are not supposed to be there. Yep. Yeah. Moving on to shipping. I don't have a ton to say here other than to say we decided to keep it as simple as possible. So we're going with send from China. That was your recommendation, and we're just doing it. Their rates are really good, and I just wanted to avoid all the headache of working with fulfillment services other than just Send from China is a company that will pick up or take your game from the manufacturer and ship it individually to everywhere around the world. And they have prices included for VAT. They have prices included for various countries that have weird tax laws and stuff. They're fantastic. They've been really, really great. Becky from Send from China. And a tip here is, and what I've heard from other people is, once you start getting into shipping stuff, just ask your representative every single possible question you can think of. I'm going to run through just a random list for people to jot this down. If you're working with somebody who's not Send from China, these are things you need to keep in mind and be aware of. So pick fees, packaging fees, processing fees, account management fees, storage fees, volumetric fees, exchange rate possibly affecting prices on stuff, factory to fulfillment, who's taking care of that, transport to port fees, EXW versus FOB, import fees, and brokerage fees. Now, if I haven't scared you off, go for it. But my encouragement here is, like, for us, again, we're just trying to keep it simple as possible, which is we're going for Send from China. They're going to take care of all of it.
Yeah, like you're saying, when a company gives you the cost, make sure they're including everything and not just postage, right? How much does it cost? If it's just a box, then it's probably not that big a deal. But if you have a game and an expansion and a promo and this other doodad that is an add-on, like, all of that is going to incur more expense. And so being aware of what the actual cost is. Another thing about Send from China, you don't have to worry about like VAT registration and all the headaches and kind of go along with.
They are your representative. Yep.
Right. And I've used them in the past. I'm planning on using them multiple times going into next year. So with Send from China, you just have to be aware of the size of your game, right? You want to make sure it's small. Under a pound is kind of the sweet spot. Anything like once you start getting up into more than a pound, more than a couple kilograms, you're running into issues where it's probably not going to be cost effective. Also, the bigger the box, the bigger the packaging, the more likely you're going to run into damage and things like that. They do a good job like packaging and things like that. But when you're shipping from China to around the world, you just run into more issues when the game is bigger and bigger. So I recommend them. I've used them in the past. There's other companies as well. Send from China is not the only service that does this. So there's other ones you might be able to find a better price or better packaging and whatnot. But I know Jelly Bean Games, Peter C. Hayward is where I first heard about them. So they've used them in the past and had success. But yeah, I'm a big fan. If you have a small game and you're just trying to get things out the door, not have to worry about all the freight shipping and logistics that go with, putting pallets on containers and getting containers to different fulfillment centers in different parts of the world. And okay, well, only sold 14 copies in Australia. And so now am I going to now it doesn't make sense to send a pallet down there. You run into issues when you're talking about worldwide logistics. And in my mind, it's just a lot easier to send it directly from China if you can. Okay, so that's 9. We going into 10?
Yeah, we're going into 10. And this is
your
Kickstarter page. Finally, we're here. First off, I think your Kickstarter advice book is a holy grail of content. Everyone who is wanting to, hopefully you'll keep it updated. Maybe every 5 years you'll do a revision or something, but it is fantastic. And they go into a lot of specificity, 390 pages, whatever it is. I definitely encourage you to go there because Gabe breaks down each one, and it's a really, really good resource. For your page, obviously you want to make a page and understand that some of these things take time. You have to set up your payment of where that bank account is going to go to, and you have to basically, you have to figure out your pledge tiers and where those are going to go. I had one of my mentors encouraged me that whenever possible. So we have a $10 game, and if we want to fund with that $10 game, then let's say our pledge funding goal is $1,000. That's 100 people that we're going to have to get. Now 100 people isn't crazy, but one of the things that he really encouraged me was anything you can do to try to provide other opportunities for people to increase their base pledge. So my goal is to have my average pledge level closer to something around $22, because we have a game. We have 2 games that are kind of coming out side by side with each other. They're basically a different skin of the other. And then we have some digital offerings because we're coming out with a video game alongside it. And I think that was one thing that's hopefully setting us apart. We'll see.
Like a video game version of the card game.
Yeah, it is a free video game. So one of the things that we know is that people don't have any trust for us right now. We have nothing to offer to say, yes, we can reach out to these reviewers and say, hey, you're respected in the community. Maybe people will trust your word. But our goal with that was just, let's do a simultaneous video game launch so that people can literally play this game on their phone immediately for free and say, do they like it? So we'll see. Hopefully that works and doesn't bite us in the butt, and that people just say, oh, it's a free game. I already have it. Why would I buy it? I don't know if how that's going to work yet, but I think
yeah. Well, a lot of these folks that are interested in backing card games, they kind of prefer the physical product, right? Just because you can play it as a digital version, they still a lot of times people get both because it's different situations, right? But they prefer the physical game. That's why they're board gamers or card gamers in general. Help me go back to something you said just a second ago. You're hoping that your average customer value is $22, even though you're only selling a $10 game. So where's the other 12 coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first off, we have, a $10 base pledge. If you get both games, it's $18. So that's a huge part of that. So we want as many people as possible to get the 18. But then we're offering some other things. So we're offering some digital. There's like a digital tier where you can basically get some content that's just for the digital game if you want to get a discount from what Google Play Store would be offering. And then we're offering some things like if you want your likeness or some character maybe in your D&D campaign in a chibi form, you can get that for a certain amount. And then we're even offering a few offerings of if you want your character that you're getting as an illustration to be animated and put into our game, we're offering that as well. And so those are going to hopefully bring us up. We're offering those up very like 20 and then 5. So that's pretty limited. But I'm hoping that, that'll shift our average backer, up to like that 22.
And that makes sense. I would say in this situation, I would go for like $15. Like that'd be my goal is to get about $15 as on average, right? Because you're going to get most people, the vast majority are going to buy just the game.
Especially when you consider like we're offering a print and play as well. So I think that's absolutely fair.
Yeah, I would go for 15. 22 seems a little high. Anytime a game or a publisher is offering a game and also an expansion. So let's say it's a $50 game and a $20 expansion. So it's a $70 all in, maybe there's some metal coins or this other thing. Maybe we can get up to 100. Let's say $100 all in deluxe, right? And the base game is 50. A lot of times I shoot for that average being somewhere in the middle, right? So 50 and 100 obviously is around 75. And so I would honestly go a little bit lower on that, maybe 70 is my goal. Okay. And then and why are we talking about these numbers? Well, that helps me understand marketing as far as how much can I spend to acquire a backer. If I'm going to average 70, and once you get in the middle of the campaign, you can know for sure because they'll tell you exactly how much money you're averaging. You can do the math yourself and go, oh, there it is. But on the pre-marketing or the pre-campaign side, I'm thinking through, okay, I want to average, let's say $70. And so that means I can spend up to a certain amount and still make money per backer, as far as my marketing, my Facebook ads, whatever. And so that's why these numbers are important. And you don't want to go too high because that can screw up your marketing on the front end. And you're like, oh shoot, I'm spending too much compared to how much I'm actually averaging per backer. So just some things to think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said 22, that's probably a little bit generous. I did want to bring that full circle to say, and if you remember, I'm hoping to spend about $10 per backer. So getting myself in that $10 to $20 range feels like a really good sweet spot where hopefully I'm still going to have a little bit of profit.
And like we talked about this whole time though, with this, it's not even necessarily about, I got to make a bunch of money. Like, no, we're building a company, building a brand, learning, growing, figuring things out, proving like just what you said a moment ago, no one trusts you because you haven't delivered anything. You can't point to evidence to say, this is who we are because there's no real evidence yet. And that's why another reason why starting off with an 18 card game, starting with something small is so powerful because hopefully you can deliver this 2 months, 3 months. Like you can get this thing turned around quick, especially because it's shipping directly from China. You're not having to wait that extra 6 to 8 weeks of sitting on a boat, waiting in a container. Now it's at the fulfillment center, but they're way behind. And it'll get to you when it gets to you. Like you're eliminating all of that. And I think it's super smart to go this direction.
Yeah, we're giving ourselves, we're saying that it's going to be 3 or 4 months, but I'm hoping we can fulfill our way earlier than that. Hopefully people will be planning this before Christmas.
Undersell, over deliver.
Absolutely.
Because no one ever got upset because you delivered early. Even if you have to tell them something that's like, 6 months, even though you really believe it's 2, you always want to build in a buffer. And just, you can't always know. Sometimes like the other game you're working on, it's hard to know when that's going to deliver because you're not really sure how long it's going to take to finish because it's such an epic branching thing. That's what I've run into with Robomon. When I set up the dates and saying, hey guys, I think I can deliver it in this amount of time, it was based on knowledge of way back then, even like months prior to the campaign, of thinking through, okay, what does this timeline look like? And it was in a lot of ways just a big old guess. And then getting more and more into development, it's like, oh shoot, this took way longer than I thought. This thing over here, I didn't even know was a thing. Again, you don't know what you don't know, and it causes issues sometimes. And now, the dates are getting moved around and pushed back, and that it sucks because now you feel like you're letting backers down. You feel like, hey, I told you a thing, and it's not going to be the case. And here's my plan. Here's where we're going, whatever. But it's way better to have an idea and then deliver early, right? Tell people something and then deliver early than the opposite.
Certainly there's a lot more details. You want to review, you want reviews, you want previews, you want how to play video. You need to cover all your bases and let your people know who are you using for manufacturing and shipping. And you need to do your best to make it look beautiful and, really seem very, very polished. That's we want people to, we're almost creating an experience with the Kickstarter page, and we don't want anything to bring them out of that experience of, what is this game? Let me learn about it. Let me get excited about it. Versus, do they know what they're doing with shipping? Do they know what they're doing with manufacturing? That seems weird. What are they, why are the prices so strange in that or high or, so we just want to create this almost as an experience as well for them to get excited about the game and, we take all the pressure off of the rest of it.
Right. Ultimately it's a sales page like any other sales page on the internet. Think about how Amazon sets up their sales pages. They've put billions of dollars into that customer experience, and it works. So what can we learn from other companies and websites and the way they structure things, almost the funnel of kind of how you guide the user through the experience? Another reason GameFound in a lot of ways is so much superior to Kickstarter because the way they lay out pages and the way it's navigable with the little table of contents, so much nicer than Kickstarter's. It's the same as it was like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. Like they haven't really changed much. And so, but thinking through it, if you're using Kickstarter, how can you do Kickstarter's job that they should be doing? How can you do that and guide the user through this experience where they learn about your game, they're seeing the images, they're seeing videos and all that kind of stuff. And like you said, and it makes you look like you know what you're talking about, you know what you're doing. Like, oh, this person is legitimate because they've already got this planned and they've got this, these companies that they're working with and all of that. It goes a long way.
Biggest things here is just keep it simple, and keep it short. There was a thing from one of your books that just said, avoid the 30-day campaigns, especially for your first one. There's no point. We're doing 14 days and I'm really excited about that because I think I can keep the momentum up. We have some releases planned along the way that are just, exciting, but I'm not having to maintain steam for a whole month.
Yeah, 14 is nice. I've been doing 18-day campaigns. I start on a Tuesday and then end on a Friday evening, although you could do it on Thursday. I don't know that to get a lot of extra on Friday. There's a lot of value in ending beyond, like either on or beyond a Tuesday, because Tuesday is kind of like the shopping day for crowdfunding. It just is. And so ending Tuesday at midnight or ending Wednesday at midnight, there's a lot of value in that because you're going to get that extra Tuesday.
That's good feedback. We may change that.
Yeah. But I think what you're doing, a 14-day campaign. So Tuesday to the next Tuesday makes sense. I would definitely end it at like 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday if you're going to do that. Because going into Wednesday, how much more are you going to get? You just got that extra day in there. I'm thinking about doing Thursday at 11:59 going forward. So it's a 17-day campaign. Mm-hmm. I don't have a whole, it's a little bit arbitrary, but I think, I don't know how many backers.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know how many backers you get on Friday. Like Friday's not exactly a day where people are like, oh, I'm going to go see what's on Kickstarter. Friday's more of a day where it's basically the weekend at that point. People are checked out. They're not thinking, oh, let's go buy games. So Tuesday is obviously the best day to start. That continues to be true. Now, was that a self-fulfilling prophecy? I don't know. It just is what it is. Tuesday is Kickstarter and crowdfunding shopping day. But then, the shorter campaign is definitely better. If you're starting out, though, there is maybe some value in doing a longer campaign just because it gives you more media cycles, more time for people to become aware of who you are. So it is something to consider if you're starting out. If you're established, I would definitely do 2 weeks-ish, in that 15 to 17, 18-day range. But it is something to think about. Now, you have a game. I don't know, man. I don't know. I would think through what do you want to take on as a company and as a person? Because that's a month of stress, a month of answering comments and posting updates. And like, that's a month. So maybe from that standpoint,
while I'm also
30 days,
a full-time job.
Exactly. So that's something, it's the whole picture. It's the holistic thing. So it's not like, hey, don't ever do a 30-day campaign, because there could be some value in that. But I would say personally, both from a like personal experience, but also a business experience, shorter is just seemingly better overall. All right. So any concluding thoughts? Anything that like talking at the beginning, an hour and a half ago, like this has become just a really branching conversation. I've really enjoyed kind of diving into a lot of things and being able to talk to you, because you're right, again, in the middle. You're in the thick of this right now. And then I've been doing this for several years. And so it's kind of fun to talk about things like, oh yeah, that thing I dealt with 5 years ago. Like that's been interesting. But now that you're in it, you're sitting on G, waiting on O, you're about to launch this thing. What like closing thoughts, final advice would you give people?
Yeah, my biggest thing is join a community like the Board Game Design Lab in every step of the way. Your website, your game design, your Kickstarter page, your ads, your art. Ask in there, get feedback. You don't know what you don't know, and you have some really brilliant people in there who have done this before, or at the very least have, certainly their own passion for games and want to see something great and brilliant made. And I have found I've made a lot of relationships, playtesters and fellow game designers that we can, go back and forth with in that community. And so I think that's the biggest thing. I don't, not to toot your horn, but there's something to be said for having such a passionate group of people who want to see you succeed. Because my wife wants to see me succeed, but she can only tolerate so much of this was what Sin from China said. Well, what do you think about this graphic design? It's like, okay, spot the difference. Like, what's the, but people care in Board Game Design Lab. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, well, I definitely wholeheartedly agree on that one. Well, Kyle, we've been talking about Tic-Tac/Slash a little bit throughout this episode. Give me like the elevator pitch and, as of the airing of this episode, it's live on Kickstarter. So tell people a little more about it and, kind of encourage them to go check it out.
So everyone knows Tic-Tac-Toe, and it's, infamously the lowest rated game on Board Game Geek. And so we ambitiously said, hey, let's make it better. It is an 18-card game that fits in your pocket. It absolutely can be taught to, an 8-year-old. There's 3 rules, and it is, I would say, as deep as something like a checkers, or, maybe not ambitious enough to say something like chess, but I have probably played 400 or 500 games of it, and I feel like I'm still learning aspects of strategy. It is a game that plays in between 2 and 5 minutes. And so the idea is that you're pulling that out. We're hoping to do completely waterproof cards, waterproof packaging, and that'll kind of let you literally take it anywhere and do anything with it. We're coming out with 2 themes, fantasy and ninja, if you like either of those. And if we do well enough, we have a 3rd one in mind that we would love to bring to market if people are interested.
Very, very cool. Well, Kyle, man, really appreciate your time. Thanks for diving into these different steps. Hopefully people found a lot of value in this, can take some notes and figure out ways to do it themselves. That's always the goal with these episodes, is not just like sitting here and chatting about the theory, but like helping people practically find ways to create games that people love. And so thank you for helping in that, and good luck with the campaign.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave. Appreciate it.